Hey everybody, Pastor Darren here at Seattle Revival Center. Welcome back to our video series that we're calling The Heart of the Matter. We're going through the book of Galatians, looking at random texts in chronological order and taking the cap off of them and chugging them down and just enjoying them for what they are. There's some beautiful stuff here in the book of Galatians. We only have so much time. We're trying to keep these videos short, but if you'd like to go deeper, you can go to our website at seattlerevivalcenter.com, click on Sermon of the Week and enjoy our podcast, or you can show up on a Sunday morning. We meet at 10 o'clock. That is if you live in the greater Seattle area and you're not already part of a good Bible-believing, holy rolling church. All right, so anyways, welcome to our video today. We're going to be not necessarily in the book of Galatians today, but we're going to be setting things up for our next video where we'll be studying Galatians chapter 2, verses 11 to 14. If you don't understand some of the historical and cultural issues at work here, then the big blow up between Peter and Paul isn't going to make a whole lot of sense to you. What we're going to look at today is what it takes for sinful people, right, to come into the presence of God, what that looked like in the Old Covenant, and then how it changed under the New Covenant, and how God had to come to Peter and reveal these things to him in a special way so that he would be open for the gospel and its expansion as it went across nations, okay? So, first of all, you have to understand that under the Old Testament, there was a series or a set of instituted clean laws, okay? These were ceremonial laws that required worshipers to follow the laws down to the T so that they could come into the presence of God. In order to come into the presence of God, you had to be ceremonially clean, and that means that you had to eat clean foods, okay? There were certain things that you couldn't do. For example, you couldn't touch dead things. If you had a disease, or if you touched somebody with a disease, you couldn't come into the presence of God. So these are a few examples of the clean laws. Now, these ceremonial laws, they were established as a teaching method because God was setting up a prophetic drama, teaching His people, His chosen people, that sinful people or unclean people could not come into His presence without cleansing, okay? Now, Jesus shows up and He changes everything. His mission and message begins completely fulfilling and satisfying the law, and everything is about to change and everything's about to shift. Because up to this point, you were clean because of what you ate and because of kind of what you touched and didn't touch and external type factors. Now, Jesus shows up in Mark chapter 7, verses 14 to 23, and He calls the people together and He says to them, "Listen to me, all of you, and understand there is nothing outside a person that by going into him can defile him, but the things that come out of a person are what defile him." And when He had entered the house and He left the people, His disciples said to Him, "Jesus, what are you talking about? We don't get it." And Jesus says, I don't understand why you don't understand. Don't you see that whatever goes into a person from the outside cannot defile him, since it doesn't go into the heart, but it goes into the stomach, and then it's expelled. Thus, at that moment, Jesus declared that all foods were clean. Verse 20, Jesus says, "For what comes out of a person is what defiles him. For from within, out of the heart of man, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within, and they are what defiles a person." So even though Peter was there and he heard that message, he didn't really get it, okay? Because God had to come to Peter later on in Acts chapter 11 and give him a vision, a revelatory experience where Peter could participate in it and actually have his heart changed, renewed, so that he could be a key player in seeing a gospel of grace go to nations. Here's what happened. In Acts chapter 11, a supernatural picnic comes out of the sky, a huge picnic blanket, a basket, and God says to Peter, "I want to have a picnic with you." He opens up the picnic basket, and out of the basket come all these animals that were considered ceremonially unclean. And out of the picnic basket comes all these animals that were considered ritualistically unclean. So there's like horsies that come, so my daughter calls them horsies, that come out of the picnic basket. There are snakes that come out of there. There's even like a halibut that comes flopping out of there. And what does God say to Peter? He says, Peter, kill and eat these animals. That's my favorite verse in the Bible, by the way. I think that's awesome. Can you imagine having a dream where there's all these animals and God's like, Peter, kill them and eat them? We don't even know how Peter did that, but apparently Peter carried a pretty hefty knife, which is also very cool to think about. So that's Acts chapter 11. Now, immediately following this heavenly encounter, Peter has the opportunity to lead a Gentile to Christ. That is Cornelius, who actually receives Jesus, is converted, and also receives the Holy Spirit. From that point on, Peter began eating with Gentiles. He was eating their food, and this was incredibly controversial. But Peter understood it not only in his head, but in his heart. And Peter had to really understand this, the motivation of the gospel, because it has everything to do with the heart and very little to do with food and drink. That God is concerned about the hearts of man. And in order to show Peter that, Peter had to get it through kind of an intellectual teaching from Jesus, and then followed up with a revelatory vision directly from heaven. And these two factors together would change everything, at least for a little while. And we'll look at our next text in our next video, where there is some inconsistency in who Peter's willing to eat with and when he's willing to eat with them. And Paul shows up to confront him, and it goes down. Anyways, love you guys. We'll see you next time.